which is the truth. Like that line, like I read that, I was like, whoa, that's why I do all this.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I am co-presenter, and today Joe's interviewing Joseph Betesh of Betesh Media. Jo found Jo through the podcasting agency that she uses, and she's very glad she did, as she really enjoyed her conversation with the highly energetic and driven Jo. Jo is a digital branding consultant to Fortune 500s and international advertising agencies for 6 years before starting Betesh Media. He has an undying passion for culture, brand and technology that drives his entrepreneurial spirit and creative vision. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Jo Betesh of Betesh Media. Great to have you with me, Jo. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jo. This is so super exciting. I don't think I've ever actually done a podcast with anybody overseas before, so this is definitely a new experience for me, and it's very refreshing to speak to somebody from the other side of the pond.
Lovely, and I'm quite excited because you're a professional, I think, in the podcasting world from the conversations we've just been having, so I'm looking forward to finding out more about what you do.
I'm excited.
And it sounds like you talk just as much as I do, so this will be interesting. When
right.
When it gives me the stats.
It might be a little bit harder for you editors in terms of shortening it, but we're definitely going to have a good time. I can guarantee you that.
Well, GoToMeeting now tells me the percentage of the talk that I did and that my guest did, which is a bit depressing because sometimes it's like, lots of me and sometimes it's the other way around, which is obviously...
So this one might be an outlier.
Lovely. So start by telling us a bit about you and what you do.
Okay, cool. So my name's Jo Betesh. I am 22 years old, living in New York. I started a digital agency at the time. I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school. I started doing web design for a couple of my father's friends and a couple of friends of my own. And I was 16 at the time. And then from there, I kind of just signed more and more clients, said yes to more and more things that I didn't know how to do, figured out how to do them. And now we have quite the agency under our belt. We have a couple offices here in Manhattan. We have a few people working for us out in California. We have a couple developers in Israel. And we focus mostly on web design, on actual design, graphic design, presentation design, experience design. We focus on branding, so identity, logos, naming, copywriting. We focus on social media a lot, so creating content for that, managing accounts, and then our new hotspot is podcasting. It's something I've recently gotten into myself. I have a show with just a couple of friends where we discuss pop culture, industries, business, that kind of stuff, and I've kind of fell in love with the format and fell in love with the production, and so we started doing it for our clients as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. You're a lot younger than I am, but interesting that we both have a similar sort of just say yes and then work out how to do it afterwards.
I think it's a much simpler way to live. There's a lot of talk right now about how to say no, and it's important to say no when you have to say no and all these things. I don't get it. I'm not really. It's not really in my DNA to say no to something that could be either one, financially lucrative, or two, enjoyable. So when somebody asks me, or a potential client or an existing client asks me to do something that's not generally in our wheelhouse, you say yes. You have to, of course, be honest and be frank and be transparent with them and telling them that it might not be something you have experience in, or it might not be something you know how to do at the moment. But just say we'll figure it out. The best things in life are always the ones you don't plan out. So it's a lot of people that I know, and myself especially, we figured out our best skills while trying to figure out something else. It's not something you sit down and say, well, I have to figure this out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was saying to you before we came on that I started helping clients when I had my publishing business with their websites. And in fact, in the days when most small businesses didn't know that they needed a website. So that shows you it's a little while ago. So I started my business in 2004.
2005, so it's probably 2006, 7, and I've got slides that I prepared that, you know, were convincing people that it was a good idea. And never mind social media, that hadn't even come along by then.
So you have a couple of years of a head start on me. I started doing sites in around 2010.
Right. Yeah.
I interned for a web design company, and I tried to learn how to build my own site. I studied HTML and CSS more than like I've studied anything else in my entire life. I read how to make websites for dummies, this and that. I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. You know, I'm not a very logical thinker. I can't really follow that too many steps of logic. So the code and the wrappers and the this and that were just way too much for me. So I was so frustrated. I was going to quit. And the day before I was planning on leaving, I looked over my boss's shoulder and I saw he was on something called Theme Forest. And at the time, I had no idea what Theme Forest was. You know, I didn't know what that was. I thought, you know, I had to make sites from scratch. And I logged on to see what he was looking at. And as it turns out, you don't need to build your own site from scratch. You can, in fact, buy a template and customize it to your needs. So I said, what in the hell am I spending so much time trying to figure out how to build a site for if I've got an online directory of sites that I could build for other people? You know, at that time, in around 2010, for a company to, this is before WordPress is so mainstream. This is still when everybody's doing HTML. For a company to get their own site, a small business, I don't know how much you were charging, but the companies around me were paying between $20,000 and like $100,000 for a very, very, very simple site. Something you could build today on Squarespace in a matter of 15 minutes. So I call up companies and tell them, hey, you guys need a new site. Call any agency in New York. Whatever they quote you, I'll charge you 10% of that. And I promise you I'll get it done within the day. And I used to build sites in 5 or 6 hours using these templates, and they used to be absolutely gorgeous. And clients would be paying 10% of what they normally would be paying at an agency. And were these sites the best in the world? I was 16 years old trying to make a living, you know, and they were great, but they weren't the best. But today we've gotten a bit more sophisticated in our process, and now we pull out custom sites on pretty much any content management system you could think of.
Yes, yeah. But as you say, it's interesting how it came about. I mean, I was doing WordPress and people just saw that as a blogging site, a blogging platform. So a lot of the traditional agencies that were doing, as you say, HTML and stringing all the pages together and creating, in effect, their own content management system were sort of slagging it off, saying, you know, that's not what you need, that's not effective. And of course, it was the opposite way around. But it took a long time for that to sort of trickle through. And I guess it's when the really big companies started using WordPress and other content management systems off the shelf, but then customized, that people actually started to take it more seriously, I guess.
You know what's crazy? I was just reading. They published a stat in March. I think March last year, 2018. WordPress now powers 30% of the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
30%
and you
of
can't
all
tell.
websites online are built on WordPress.
Yeah, and the fact that it's open source and the fact that anyone really can update it, or I wouldn't choose to, obviously. I'm not really technical. But yeah, the fact that it's an open source product and so it's being developed in a sort of collaborative way, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's a crazy thing.
So you've touched a bit on why you do what you do, and you know, you're still really young.
Yeah, super young.
So tell us why you do what you do, and it'd be fascinating to get you back in sort of 30 years time and see what you're doing, and if the nuance is different.
So I'll give you the whole spiel. I'll go back even further for you. So growing up, my father had furniture stores all over New Jersey and Pennsylvania in the States. And from the time I could walk, he put me on the floor selling furniture with his salespeople. And in the summers, I used to go after camp to the store, and I used to hang out in the store around the salespeople, around the customers. And, you know, not consciously, I learned a lot about human psychology and the sales process, and how to influence a potential customer's opinion, and how to influence the sales cycle, and how to influence whether or not they're going to make a purchase. And at the time when I was that young, I must have been literally like 8, 9, 10 years old. I didn't think much of it. You know, it just sounds like, okay, well, how do you sell a sofa, or how do you sell a dining set? But really what I was learning was how to communicate, and how to communicate properly in a way that the person on the other end heard what I was saying and listened to it and agreed with it. So that what really was treated a lot like sales. You know, it wasn't fancy. It wasn't psychology. It wasn't advertising. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't anything sexy or hot. It was just sales. You know, I could have been selling anything. And then over the years, I also gained a bit of an appreciation for art. My mother is Danish from Copenhagen, so culture and art and music and food, that's a big part of my upbringing from that side. And my father having that kind of business mindset and my mother kind of having that art background really raised me with like on two opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, if I'm spending the day with my father, I'm spending the day selling sofas. I'm spending the day with my mother, we're going to a museum. And growing up with everybody in the same house really built this kind of a tug of war in me that I didn't know which side to pull at all times. And what wound up happening was I developed an appreciation and a passion for art, but I was able to speak about it and I was able to communicate about this art and express it in a way that made sense to the general world. To the same person who would buy a sofa, I could explain to them why something in a museum mattered because I had these two influences in my life every day, which was super, super important and not something I realized that I had up until literally I was writing college essays and one of the prompts was, how do your two parents affect you? If you have two parents, how do your two parents affect you? And what have they done for your life? And that was really like that was the first time anybody ever made me, think like that. And that's when I realized where those two influences came from. Anyway, so going back, so throughout middle school, my father didn't let me work in the store anymore. I wasn't allowed to be on the floor selling furniture because I was old enough. I had to be in the warehouse putting furniture together. So literally for 8 hours a day in the blazing sun, I was assembling furniture, and it taught me an insane amount of work ethic. I always say, if you don't know what you want to do in life, do something you hate, and you wind up wherever your mind goes, that's what you want to do. So at the time, it was like I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and social media was just getting hot. I was 6th grade. I made my Facebook account. Facebook was the only social media network that was really mainstream at the time between me and my friends. MySpace was like around, but nobody really used it. And Friendster, I didn't even know what that was. So social media was getting hot. Nobody really knew what it was. And in 8th grade, I was asking my dad, dying. I said, Dad, let me put the store, Jason's Furniture at the time, on Facebook, and can I please get out of the warehouse and only do social media? He said yes. It worked out for a week, and then he said, yeah, I don't know what the value in this is, and I went back to the warehouse. No. I stepped foot back in that warehouse. I said, I got to get out of this store. I got to get out of Jersey. So I asked my father the next year if I was allowed to intern for a company in New York. And he said, yeah, sure. So in 9th grade, I interned for a company called the Tabish Group. They're an IT company in Manhattan. They provide computers and technology and all electronic solutions for a lot of major companies. And I interned and I learned how to put together and take apart a computer. I was 14 at the time, and I absolutely fell in love with technology. Anything and everything tech I was consuming. So blogs like Engadget, which is now The Verge, and all these different I think I was on Reddit at the time, and Reddit was also super low key. I was on Twitter, and a lot of things I was just consuming all technology news that I can, and I wanted to get into tech somehow, some way. And I told myself I was either going to make the next Facebook, or I was going to build a bunch of different Facebooks with help from other people.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket in hoping to build the next Facebook. So I said, all right, let me kind of hone in on one necessary skill that I would need in order to build the next Facebook, and I'll do that for a ton of companies. What was at the time was web design. Web design wasn't as simple as it is today. It was something that was kind of a talent almost. Today it's like you do web design, okay, great, you have a Squarespace account, so do I. But back then it was really, if you knew web design, you knew code and you knew development, and you really knew how to build something beautiful and something that mattered. Yeah. So I interned for a company called the Internet Construction Company, and that's back when we were originally speaking about. I spent 3 months in the summer trying to figure out how to learn how to make websites, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. I was in the office for 10 hours a day, just sleeping over books, trying to read it, trying to figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. Then I found Theme Forest. I started customizing sites for other people, and I kind of developed like a client base. And throughout I think it was my junior year of high school, I was making good money doing it, and I didn't really know what to do with the money because I was 16 years old, living in New Jersey, not really much you could do with money there. And I said, venture capital is super hot now. Everybody's really into venture capital. Let me see what that world is like. So I interned for a venture capital fund, and we I sat down. The CEO, his name's Alan Cutter. Goes by Ozzy. He lives in Israel now. He lived in New York at the time. Huge mentor of mine. Really an incredible guy. He taught me a lot. Up there with my father and a few other guys, definitely one of the most important businessmen in my life. And he kind of made me his right hand man. I was 16, turning 17 at the time, and he really trusted me with a lot, and it really built a lot of my confidence. And not that I had a confidence problem, but it really showed me that other people believe in me as well, and that's not just mom and dad and myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing web design for him. We were building the site for the venture capital fund, and then he asked me to start doing the graphic design and build a deck to raise money. And I've never built a deck before, but of course, like we said before, I said yes. And I learned how to build decks, and I really got involved in venture capital. He would bring me in on all of his meetings. We'd have startups coming in, raising money, and I really got very involved in that world, so much so that the next summer, it was my senior year of high school, I interned for a company called Dream It Ventures, which is a venture capital fund that was being directed by one of the partners who was on the other fund that I was working for. And there I really fell in love with the startup world, technology, and all the new things coming out, all the emerging tech, artificial intelligence, drones, all this crazy stuff. And this is probably, I want to say, about 2014 that I was doing this. And after meeting after meeting with all these different startups, I realized that the numbers really aren't my game. I'm not in venture capital for the numbers. I don't really care about the returns, all these things. It's not why I'm here. I'm here because I want to help companies build brands. I want to help them build up. But at the time, there was no such thing, in my head at least, as branding. Marketing and advertising was always a thing. It was not something I ever thought about. I knew I did web design, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And it was then when I realized that I didn't like the numbers, that I realized I love building these companies, building a brand. And what is a brand? It's something that means it's kind of an idea or a notion that means more to other people than it does to the person itself. It's a concept that can be translated to multiple facets of the world without being translated. And I said, this is something I'm very interested in. Let me try to work this. And at the time, I was still doing web design for a bunch of different clients. And I sat down with one of my past clients and I said, let me ask you a question. I built the site for you however many years ago. What was the value in that? Because the client at the time didn't pay a ton of money. But I wanted to, and the site was good. I wasn't the best web designer in the world, but I asked him, where was the value in what we did for you? Because he was super happy and he loved what we did. And I didn't really understand it. And he told me, what was more valuable to me than the website was the discovery process you took me through to figure out what needs to be put on that site. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. I never thought of that. What do you mean? He said, well, when we sat down, I told you that we built an asset analyzation tool that is able to track properties and their values over the years. And you told me, huh? And it made me realize that, not everybody knows what I do and what that means. So myself at the time, I think I was 16, I told him, oh, you mean you have a tool that lets me know how much my piece of art is going to be worth in 2 years? And he said, yeah, exactly. I said, oh, well, we should put that on your site. We shouldn't put what you just said. Nobody knows what the hell that is, And that little tool that I had was so important. I didn't realize at the time, because for me that was just making sense out of things and putting them into English. But that is branding, and branding wasn't a term in my head at the time. I didn't know that was a profession or a skill or let alone a career or an agency. That was just something you did. And it really goes back to my days literally selling furniture. I was able to show a customer what a sofa was and be able to explain it to them in a way where it sounded like they wanted to buy it. And because I have that background in art and in culture, I was able to do the same thing there. So what branding became was a real kind of convergence of these two worlds where I was able to really sell art. And our MO for a long time, it's not anymore because it's a bit immature, but it used to be, we make art that makes money. That was our motto, was that we're really culture rich, we're really, really media heavy, but we're not artsy. We're really focused on design, but the bottom line is good design doesn't mean it looks clean. Good design means it makes you more money. And that was our whole thing. And it still is. We're a little bit more sophisticated in the way we say it now. But that was really that was we were really, really different. Like in New York agencies, they're either marketing agencies or they're design agencies. They're either super creative and don't even care about money, but they still charge you $200,000 for a site, or they're super, super, super marketing focused and they have no idea what good design looks like. And we were kind of that middle, but we weren't a balance of the two. We were both extremes in one. And so today we've kind of grown up a little bit. Not that much. It's only been a couple of years. But today
It's
so
still
our
only
whole,
22, remember?
still only 22. But
Got
today
lots
our
of time,
whole our motto is transformed from we make art that makes money to we say a lot of times now, tomorrow guaranteed. Companies sit down with us to make sure that their future is kind of sealed in the book, and that we make sure that they're ahead of their game at all times. So we're a digital agency that provides solutions to make sure that they exist within the next 2 or 3 years. Because the digital world is a scary one for a lot of people who don't know it. Not every business is internet proof. Most businesses aren't internet proof. So we kind of sit down with companies and make sure that they are internet proof. So whether that's rebranding or redoing their site or working on social media content or doing a podcast, we just do anything and everything to make sure that the company is going to be around a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years from now.
Yeah,
that's kind of the feel. And we do it, and I know you asked me why. I went into a what. Sorry about that. I digressed a bit. I got excited. Why do I do it? I know that was the original question. I know. Why do I do it? I don't really know. You know, it's like, it's funny. I had a photographer working for me once, and she was incredible. Her name is Sarah Rhoda. She was really great. And I asked her, how long have you been a photographer? And she told me something so brilliant. And she said, oh, well, I was always a photographer. I just didn't always have a camera. And
brilliant answer.
But it's the truth, you know.
Yeah.
Why do I do what I do? I don't know. It's just the way I am. It's just it's not a profession. It's a personality trait. It's a characteristic. It's just the way I think. And now that I have the tools to actually execute on those things is awesome. It's brilliant. It's great. But why do I do it? I don't know. Same reason I eat breakfast. Same reason I walk and talk. It's just, you know, it's just kind of ingrained in me that when you sit down with somebody, you got to help them, and you got to try to leave this world a better place than you found it. And how are you going to do that? So why? I don't know. We sit down with companies, we try to make their lives a little bit easier. We try to make some money along the way. And that's it. Everyone has a good day. I don't know if that properly answered your question. I know that was a long one.
You went really New York at the end as well. Your accent really changed. I think it's great to hear that you have sort of unpicked some of what's led up to it, though. You know, you're talking about your parents being so different and you having the opportunity to do that at college and actually really identify that difference and those opportunities they gave you. And, you know, that whole work ethic piece. When you said about work ethic, it just reminded me of my dad, who used to always tell me that you only get out of life what you put into it. So he drilled a strong work ethic into me. And then you mentioned AI, and my dad died 30 years ago. I was only 19 when he died, but I found a tape the other day of him presenting at a conference, and I've managed to get it onto an MP3, and it was really odd because I didn't recognize his voice to begin with, because it's been, you know, such a long time. But then to hear him talking about artificial intelligence in what would have been something like 1985 just showed me how ahead of his time he was, and it was just so lovely to
that's a very special thing that you found a tape of him speaking.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But and also just to be speaking about something that is so modern and from so long ago, and I you know, I was sad as well, because I thought, you know, he had so much more opportunity to be part of, you know, technology as it moved forward. But yeah. So tell us a bit about what your days look like. I mean, just from what you've told me about your life, you just seem like you're full of energy, and you probably sleep 3 hours and get up at 4 and do everything, don't you?
There's nothing in this world I get more frustrated by than being tired. For some reason, for 22 years, I haven't come to terms with the fact that a body needs sleep. I cannot stand. It's for me. It seems so inefficient. You know, you're not. I have a thing. I only do things in life that are either enjoyable or productive. Everything else I really don't do. You know, so sleep is neither enjoyable nor productive. I can't work when I'm sleeping, and I can't enjoy sleep. I don't enjoy sleep. You're unconscious. You know, you don't feel it. And it's so frustrating. So I'll take you through my day a bit, and I'm a bit obsessed with my daily ritual. And it does. Okay, good. But it changes like super frequently. So I'm a bit not obsessive, but I really love routine, and I love ritual, and I love habits, and I love trying new things, experiments, stuff like that. So my daily ritual, I'll tell you what it is right now, but it's changed and shifted. I have a new daily ritual that I'm completely gung ho on, like about once a month or twice a month, and you can't convince me out of it. And if you remind me what I was doing the week before, I'll tell you, well, that's ridiculous. So I'll tell you, at the moment, I wake up my alarm goes off at 6:13 a.m. I usually wake up probably about 20 minutes before my alarm goes off. I don't know why. I love waking up before it goes off. I feel like I beat it, or like I get an extra like 20 or 30 minutes of life in that day. I feel so great. And then what do I do? Okay, I wake up at 6:13, or I wake up whatever earlier than that. I hop in the bathroom, I brush my teeth, whatever. I wash up. I head to the kitchen. I make coffee. I have I'm a big coffee guy. I'm obsessed. I just bought an OXO, I believe it's OXO. I don't know what the brand is called. A French press, and I've never had French press coffee. I used to be only an espresso guy, like that Nespresso machine, which was great. And the coffee's delicious, but I need something more in the morning. You know, it's a very short cup. I need something that's going to last, that I can really milk for like, 20, 30 minutes. And you can't have that for 20 minutes. So I invested in a French press, and I got my own coffee bean grinder. Because whenever I like something, I have to buy all the toys associated with it.
Yeah, that sounds like me. So, I would say it's about making it easy, and so it works well and all that sort of stuff. That's the sort of justification for buying everything, all the toys.
Or it's just fun, I'm not so fancy. I just have fun with it. So I bought the French press, I bought the grinder, and I subscribed to something called Trade. I think it's drinktrade.com. It's a coffee subscription service. They send you a bag of coffee beans every week, which is great because I go through literally a bag a week, which is a lot of coffee. But so every morning, so I grind them from the night before, because if I grind them in the morning, my wife is gonna wake up and she's gonna kill me. And I don't want to wake her up at 6 o'clock in the morning, because and we have a very small apartment, so I'm not gonna make it to the next day if I do that. So I usually grind them from the night before. So I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, I pour my coffee grinds into my French press, and then I boil my water at exactly 200 degrees, which is the perfect temperature for a French press. And I pour it in. I have to let it steep for 4 minutes, and then I put three raw eggs into a pot, and I put them on a very, 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 very low flame, and I just let those cook. And then I'll come in with my coffee after 4 minutes, and I'll open my laptop on my kitchen table, and I'll get to work. And usually I'm working from like 6 a.m. to about 8:30, and that's like those 2.5 hours are like by far the most productive 2.5 hours of my day. My brain is like totally ripe. The ideas that come to me are not ideas that are very common. They're not really adjusted to fit in with everyday reality, being that I haven't interacted with anything that's been regular yet. I just woke up. The sun's not even up yet. So as the sun rises, all these ideas are hitting me that aren't really in tune with the real life, which is a really good thing, in that, one or two of the ideas are like really good, and those one or two ideas have been very disruptive to either my business model or my client's business model. I've come up with the best brands I ever have within 4 minutes of having my coffee in the morning. But then there's a lot of just stupid bonkers ideas that have nothing to do with reality that I totally throw out. But I'm very focused, and I'm very attentive to make sure that those 2.5 hours go uninterrupted. So I don't have my cell phone turned on. I just have my Google Chrome browser up. I don't open email. I don't open text, because nobody expects anybody to be working from 6 a.m. to 8:30. So that's the perfect time for me to work, because nobody's going to bother me. Nobody's going to be wasting my time. And I'm completely obsessive with kind of just making sure that the mechanics of everything I'm doing makes sense. At 8:30, I'll wake up my wife. She has to go to either school or work. She alternates. I'll sit down with her, and at this point, my eggs have been on the low flame for about 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours, which is great. But I don't know if you've ever made.
What are you making, 100-year eggs or something?
Listen. You don't know how. I don't know if you've ever made these. They're phenomenal. So she wakes up, she joins me for breakfast. I peel them, and they turn out brown, and they're like almost like burnt, and they have like a very nutty, deep taste. I don't know. I love them. They're really good. I put a little bit of Mediterranean sea salt that I grind and allspice on them, and I absolutely love it. And I sit down with my wife Margie for breakfast. We sit from like 8:30 to like 9:15, and then she goes off. And then I clean the kitchen, whatever. I clean up after myself. I have to clean up after myself. That's something very important. Because ever since I got married, my wife moved into my apartment, and she's kind of commandeered the kitchen, so I'm no longer the chef. She is, so I'm just borrowing her space in the morning. that's the way I have to look at it. But I'm actually. I'm reading a book. Excuse me one second. I'm just going to go grab this book.
Yeah.
I have to plug it because it's absolutely phenomenal. It's called Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. And I've always been like this before I picked up the book. I picked it up yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm almost done with it already. I've always been very mechanic and very focused and almost a bit obsessive about how I do things exactly. Meaning I like grinding my own coffee beans. I like boiling my own eggs. I like cleaning my own, like I don't use the dishwasher in the morning because I really like scrubbing the pot. And I don't know why I like these things. It's like so stupid. You have all these tools and all these great things, and why would you ever not take advantage of them? So I'm reading this book, and what this book is called Daily Rituals: How Artists Work, and it's an account of all these famous historical figures and what their days look like. And I was flipping through it, and they came to the account of Carl Jung. I think you pronounce his last name Jung. He's a Swiss psychiatrist. And he's got a piece in here. I'm just flipping through it to find it. I'm going to read it out loud because it's absolutely phenomenal. It speaks about his time when he was in he had a tower in I think it's called Bollingen, and he had no running water. He had no electricity. And this is 1960. And he had nothing. He literally lived like almost as if he was Amish. And I'm going to read this passage because it's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. At Bollingen, Jung rose at 7 a.m., said good morning to his saucepans, pots, and frying pans, and spent a long time preparing breakfasts, which usually consisted of coffee, salami, fruits, bread, and butter. The biographer Ronald Heyman notes, he generally set aside 2 hours in the morning for concentrated writing. The rest of his day would be spent painting or meditating in his private study, going for long walks in the hills, receiving visitors, and replying to the never-ending stream of letters that arrived each day. At 2 or 3, he took tea. In the evening, he enjoyed preparing a large meal, often preceded by an aperitif, which he called a sundowner. Bedtime was 10. And this is a quote. At Bollingen, I'm in the midst of my true life. I am most deeply myself, he wrote. I have done without electricity and tend the fireplace and stove myself. Evenings, I light the old lamps. There is no running water. I pump the water from the well. I chop the wood and I cook the food. And here's the kicker. These simple acts make man simple, and how difficult it is to be simple. Which is the truth. Like that line, like I read that, I was like, whoa, that's why I do all this. Because I'm somebody, especially being in the digital world and being the profession that I'm in, every day I'm using these tools. I can name you 15 different CRMs that I'm paying for right now that run 15 different applications with this and that. It's very complex. It's very complicated. We have a lot of softwares and a lot of tools. And sometimes it's nice to just wake up and grind your own coffee beans, it's just really nice. So that's my morning. So generally I clean up the kitchen and I'm about done cleaning by like 9:30, 9:45. I sit back down, and now it depends on what my day looks like. So sometimes I'll have meetings in the office. My office is a 15-minute walk away from my apartment. So depending on what my day looks like, it's pretty sporadic. There's no really set structure after 9:45. If I have meetings in the office at like 12 or 1 or whatever, I'll walk to the office and I'll work from the office. We're on 49th and Madison, and then I'll have my meetings there. Some days, if I don't have any early meetings, I'll go to CrossFit, and I'll work out from like 12:30 to 1:15, and then by like 6-ish, I'm done. I'm done working, and remember, I've already got that 2.5 hours of work in the beginning of the day that are like completely concentrated and so focused. So there's not like a ton of work to be doing in the office. A lot of it is just like housekeeping and meetings and conference calls and all that kind of stuff. My most my real work, my most ripe work is done in the morning, and then everything out. My mind isn't as fresh as it is in the morning, so it kind of just checks off tasks. And then at like 6:30, I come home. My wife usually made dinner, so I'm at the table by 7. We have a delicious dinner. And then we just hang out. And I always have before bed though, very important. I have apple cider vinegar before bed every night. It helps me sleep and it helps me wake up in the morning, and it just makes me feel very fresh.
Oh, and how do you do that? Neat or in water?
So it's interesting. So I used to have it in tea. I used to make like a peach tea. I used to add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and honey. Now the mixture of honey and apple cider vinegar knocks you out. I've never been an insomniac, thank God. But you don't understand. Like you drink it and then your eyelids start shutting. For me at least, it's wild. And then I realized that I don't need to do that because I fall asleep just fine. So I started mixing it with just soda water, and it's like a soda. It's a little harsh to drink, but I love vinegar. Like I love pickles and stuff, so it's not so bad for me. But my wife really appreciate it so much when I drink it in bed.
romantic. I might have to check that out. I keep thinking I should have apple cider vinegar on a regular basis because I do like it.
Good.
But,
I can't really pinpoint what the exact health benefits are. Like it's supposed to like make your immune system stronger. It definitely helps my stomach, that's for sure. Because I eat a ton of spicy food, very, very acidic. So a little bit of vinegar, that opposite end of the base spectrum, is good for me just because it kind of settles my stomach.
Lovely. So that was a very comprehensive day in the life of. I love the observations about the, as you say, the sort of simplicity of things, because that is, when you actually think about it, true, I'm sure, for all of us, that those sort of rituals and those moments really can help us to get clearer, or to be more creative, or to, just be in the moment a lot more than when we're just dashing around trying to fit everything in. Yeah. I talk a lot on the podcast about my coffee. We have a bean to cup machine, so I sort of have that as a bit of a ritual, that if I want to do some reading, I'll go and make the coffee, and then sit down and drink that and do my reading, or perhaps
very nice.
Sort of thinking. I can hear a noise. I thought it was my little dog snoring.
No, that's New York City. That's noise pollution. Every 4 minutes, I can guarantee you're gonna hear an ambulance siren or a fire truck siren, something. I don't know what. It's always crazy. You can, like, every time I record a lot from either my apartment or from the office, and there's no such thing as a quiet moment. There is no quiet here in New York.
No. So you talked about the sort of frenetic activity in business, and how you do use lots of technology and so on, and given the sort of business that you're in, I can see there will be lots of tools, apps, technology that you use. But what would you say your top 3 are?
Ooh, top 3. Okay.
Hard.
So that's hard, because there's a lot of different categories of. I know you sent me these questions from before, so I should have already had these top 3 on top of my head. But of course, I did not read that. I wanted it to do this goal, so I don't have a top 3 off the top of my head. But I will tell you. So
fling a few out. They don't have to be 3.
Okay. So I'll tell you. So when it comes to like everyday life, of course my number one tool in the world is my iPhone. I conduct my entire business from my iPhone, and then second would be my laptop, my MacBook Pro. I conduct almost all my business from my MacBook in terms of doing design work and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the actual apps and services and softwares that I use day to day, I'd say the number 1 would be Evernote. I love Evernote. I use Evernote to categorize almost everything. So whether it be client meetings or personal thoughts, planning trips, what else? Literally every time I get an email that's like almost a little bit important, I copy and paste it and put it into Evernote, and I categorize it somewhere. Evernote is like by far my favorite tool ever. And I don't work for Evernote, but like they're the absolute, like if you're ever having trouble in terms of organization and all that, use Evernote. But something I found is that a lot of times we look for apps and we look for tools to make our lives easier, but a lot of times we just have to make our lives easier, and then we can use the tools and apps. I was always very disorganized, and I was like, I'll just download 14 iPhone apps that'll make me more organized, and of course that made me more disorganized, because I don't have the reason I'm so disorganized. I don't have the patience to organize. So what makes anybody think I'm gonna have the patience to use all these apps and organize everything? I don't know. But so I made a shit.
I was used to be known for trying a new to-do system or organization system. So in the old days, I'd do that. I had a Filofax, and then I got a Scion, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then I'd try this app, and then I'd do a new system of that, and I'd spend all my time reorganizing all my tasks into this new system, and that made me feel really, really productive. But I've stopped with Todoist for years.
I made a very conscious shift, like a very conscious 360, like a year and a half ago, that my business is going to be extreme, because I'm from a thought, my brain is not a very structural thing. I'm very much a free thinker, and that's where a lot of my artistic expression comes from. That's where a lot of my business ideas come from. And I always felt like adding a structural, kind of execution or a structural program to that brain would be very detrimental, and it would cap my creativity. What I found is actually, a couple of years ago, I got into real estate a little bit. I started making a couple of real estate investments and venture capital investments. So I had to be a logical thinker, and I had to have structure. And I found that having the structure made my creativity more impactful. It made it more potent. It wasn't just my free thoughts. It was, hey, here's my free thought and here's 15 ways to do it. So I made a very conscious decision. I made a huge 360 and said, I could be this free thinker, but it needs to be structured. So that's when I started using Evernote to kind of just structure everything. And it's worked out really great for me. Other tools that I use, I mean, I love Dropbox. I can't speak enough about Dropbox. That's how we kind of organize all the files for our whole entire company. I'm a big fan of FreshBooks. I was using QuickBooks for the business. I was using QuickBooks for a while, but QuickBooks just has a lot of tools and bells and whistles that we don't use, and it kind of complicates things when it comes to billing and just accounting and keeping track of money. FreshBooks I found is stupid simple to use. It has a time tracker built in for our employees, so they can track their time for client work, and we use that. We love it. What else do we use? I use Anchor for podcasting. That's where we build all our podcasts and distribute everything, which is great. Big fan of PayPal and Venmo. I love Squarespace. I use Squarespace to build a lot of our client sites. A lot of the clients with smaller budgets, we build Squarespace sites for, and they come out absolutely magnificently. I'm trying to think what else we use. I use a tool called Built With. This is pretty specific to people in the web industry, but it's a Google Chrome extension that you can install that allows you to
find out what they're using.
What they're using to build the site. It's fascinating because you go on, we look at a potential client site and it might be a good site, but we click on our little Built With icon and we can see what went into building the site and whether or not it's sustainable in the next 3 months because of an update coming out, something like that. I'm trying to think what else we use. We use Hunter, which is a email address scraper. We use that just for sales and stuff like that. What else do we? I'm going through my iPhone, seeing what else that I use a lot. I use obviously messages and phone a lot. Big one. I don't know. It's so not business related, but Waze. Oh my God, Waze is.
Oh yeah.
God. Yeah. I avoid hours and hours of traffic because of Waze. I use Spotify for music. I use Apple Music for music. I use a podcast app for podcasts. I think
I've got a podcast recommendation for you. Have you tried Overcast?
I've tried it, but I'm a big Apple guy, and so I've tried Spotify, I've tried Overcast, I've tried Dropcast, I've tried everything and anything you could ever imagine, but I always just fall back to Apple Podcasts because
I'm Apple now. I'm Apple now, but the reason I like Overcast is you can share not only episodes with people, you can actually share from a point in an episode. So if you've listened to something and there's a really key point that you want to share, you can actually share like the
That's a good tool.
Yeah, I like that's why I particularly like it.
I like that. So I use the Apple podcasting app. I use all those. I'm trying to think what else. Mail, obviously, Gmail, Google Calendar. And that's it. Nothing so
I think that's more than 3.
Nothing so special.
You're like, just see if I can put a few more than 3 in. You managed it. Brilliant. So when we started, I said we've got plenty of time, but we need to keep it within certain parameters, and we're already past that.
Are we?
We knew that would happen, didn't we?
Does that mean I'm getting cut off?
No, not at all. I'm going to ask you, what about days where things don't go right? About how you deal with that when you have a day where, because your day sounds like, because you've got that sort of regular ritualistic start to the day, that you sort of are set up, so whatever happens, it'll be fine. But right. Is that the case, or what happens if something goes horribly wrong?
So I mean, it depends how you define horribly wrong. I'm not a big horribly wrong type of guy. I'm not a big complainer. I don't see a lot of things that happen that aren't super beneficial. I have a lot of faith in somebody or something that's a lot smarter than me controlling things up there, that I know that if something happens, it's probably for the best. So my initial reaction to almost everything that could be perceived negatively is, okay, this is really good because it's going to mean something else, but I'm not really sure what it is right this second. So let's deal with it, and then we'll figure out why it was so great. And like anything and everything, there's a lot of examples I can give. A couple even very personal examples, like people getting sick or missing trips or this or that. There's a lot of real things that happen, but you realize, as long as you deal with them appropriately and you don't get frustrated, you don't get upset, and you don't get emotional, and you deal with them where they need to be dealt with in order to solve the problem, you can look back in 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, even a year, and say, oh, if we went on that trip, we wouldn't have been able to visit that person in the hospital, and we were the only ones there. And you just kind of realize certain things that make you believe, you're not the one who's in charge. and don't for a second think you are, so you don't react like you are. So if something horrible happens, you cannot pretend for a second that you know why it happened or why something didn't happen. Instead of reacting emotionally and being frustrated with something that's out of your control, take whatever you have in your power, take the tools that you have in front of you and operate with them and fix the problem and then move on. I control what I can control, and I let whoever handle the rest. I don't worry myself with things that are out of my power.
No. And what about those days where you end the day knowing that you've had the chance to live more? And I describe that as being able to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the things that you feel you should do or you have to do. What does that day look like?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If you could just repeat it.
So when you've had the chance to live more, and I talk about living more as being able to do the things that you want to do. So I suspect some of why we're sort of exploring, I'm sort of explaining it more, is because you craft your life to the point where you do what you want to do. And you tend not to do things that you should do or you have to do. You do what you want to do.
Right. So I'll tell you, every single day I'm awake is a gift. And I really try my hardest to make the most out of that gift. So, there's a billion people who would, and I'm not saying this from an egocentric perspective, but just from a reality, there's a billion people who are killing and who are dying to be the shoes that I was born in, and that's true of everybody and everywhere in every situation. Even if you're the poorest person in a country, there's somebody in a poor country wishing they were you, So not taking the day as it is and not reaching your full 100% maximum potential every single day is disrespectful to everybody who's worked so hard to put you there and everybody who wishes that they were where you are. So if you wake up and you spend a day wasted, or if you spend a day doing something that either wasn't productive or wasn't enjoyable or wasn't something that you should have been doing, you are disrespecting everybody who worked so hard to put. Even if I'm not saying that you have to be born wealthy or you have to be born with a good family, you have to be born this. The fact that you're born, and even if you're born with a disability, it's just there's somebody out there wishing they were you. I promise you that, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. So not taking full potential, not taking full advantage of that is disrespectful to the people who worked hard to put you there, and it's disrespectful to people who wish that you were there. So every single day has got to be like, if I have a day where I don't feel like I reached my 110%, it's a crappy day. Like that's not a great, and everybody has crappy days. I'm not superhuman, Everybody has crappy days, and I have a lot of those days sometimes just like everybody else. But when you have those days, you got to look back and say, okay, well, this is why this happened. This is why I didn't feel this way about this thing, and tomorrow I'm going to fix that, and we're going to learn from this. But what are the days? I know you asked. Sorry, I keep on digressing. I keep on going all over the place. I know you asked me what does a day look like when I do reach that. I explained it to you. It's almost, thank God, it's almost every day. It's waking up with my wife and having a good breakfast and getting some good work done and being with people that I love and care about and the people that love me and care about me and feeling good when I go to sleep and getting ready to wake up the next day. That's it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a lot of conversations with people who are sort of my age, thinking sort of, as I said to you before we came on, about some of the reason why I sort of started Power to Live More, about having sort of issues within families or with health or whatever, and sort of taking stock of their lives and then making changes and really having the sort of attitude that you've just described. And there's a lot of people that sort of identify with that, and we have those conversations. And I know I had a call on one of the podcasts with Nicola Semple, and her and I were saying, if only we could sort of teach our children what we've learned now, so that they don't sort of have to wait until they're older to work this sort of stuff out. But all the stuff that I read about younger people nowadays and millennials and all that sort of stuff is actually, I think, what we're talking about, which is that generationally, people of your generation actually understand it much, much better than we did, I think. And you're reflecting that in how you're living your life quite intentionally now. And I don't know that people of my generation actually did so much of that. We're sort of doing it now. There's a whole load of people.
Well, a big part of that is the internet. We're connected to anything and everything all over the world at all times. We are we're aware because we have to be. There is no other option. There is no such thing as not knowing what's going on somewhere else. So we have to be much more empathetic individuals. You have to be much more optimistic individuals, because if we're not, it's either unfortunately, I'm not really the one to say, but what this digital landscape has kind of created is just only two extremes. There's no real balance. It's either you're with it and you know what's going on and you're reacting in a positive way, or you're with it, you know what's going on, and you're victimized by it, or you victimize yourself with it. And there's no real middle ground. And you just have to try your hardest to stay on the opposite of the victim area.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation, as you say, that with the internet we are all much more aware of what's going on around us across the whole world, not necessarily just in our own countries and so on, and that must be having that sort of effect. And I guess there's more conversation generally. It's not just the people that you interact with face to face that you're having these discussions with nowadays. It's a much wider community, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Lovely, excellent. Well, thank you. So it's been great talking to you. As predicted, we could carry on for hours, but we won't.
We definitely can. We definitely can.
Well, it'd be great to get you back on in a few years, actually, and
let's
see
do it.
How things have changed.
Book it from now. I know how busy you are.
Yeah, find out how your morning ritual has changed and how many times.
You can call me tomorrow. We'll talk about a new one.
Brilliant. So how can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Cool. So I have a blog, kind of a blog. It's like a personal website. I don't know. I just throw a lot of stuff on there that I like. That's joebetesh.com. It's Joe and then B as in boy, ETESH, joebetesh.com. And I'm on Instagram at Joe Betesh. I'm on Twitter at Joe Betesh. You can find our agency's website. That's beteshmedia.com. Betesh spelled the same way. And then I have a podcast called Betesh Audio. You can find that on joebetesh.com. You click on podcast. I also have a weekly email if you guys want to sign up for that. It's literally it's sent out every Friday morning. It's super short, super sweet. And it's just like a small, short curation of the things that I've either discovered or enjoyed or created during the week. So sometimes it's like a client project, sometimes it's like a book I'm reading or a really cool quote I found, and I just put that. It's like 3 or 4 bullets in an email every single week. I shoot that every Friday. You can find that on joebetesh.com. The podcast is up there. What else? I have a blog up there. I don't know, there's a lot up there. Go to joebetesh.com or find me on Instagram and Twitter, or go to Betesh Media site.
Lovely. I'm going to sign up for that newsletter so that I can imagine you sending it whilst those eggs are boiling. Oh, sorry, not boiling. Really slowly.
really slowly.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for your time today.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com/ in this case 98, you'll find them all there. And the tool that I shared on last week's newsletter is my hosting company. So the people that I use to host my websites, and also the website for Engage for Success, which is the national movement around employee engagement, where I do various bits and pieces, including looking after the website. So if you host your site with your website developer, then this might be irrelevant to you. But if you host it direct with a hosting company, then it might be interesting to you for when you're looking next time at reviewing your supplier. I've been using a company called Liquid Web for a good few years now, and they were recommended to me by another business owner, and they just continue to impress me day in and day out. And I think the mark of a great web hosting company is the uptime of your website. So, obviously it needs to be there and working, but actually I think more importantly it's about the support that you get when it all goes wrong. And Liquid Web offer 24/7 support via chat, and they are just brilliant, and they just get on and help with whatever an issue is. And a couple of weeks ago I had an issue with my website where it kept going down every day for just a minute or two at random times. Didn't seem to be any pattern to it. And so I contacted them. It had been happening for a little while. I finally got around to doing it on a Sunday, as I said. And the person I was chatting to checked everything out, offered up some suggestions for things that I could do, made a few adjustments at their end, and then also raised a ticket for that to be looked into further. And then I got another email the next day with some more ideas for how I could better optimise my website so that I wasn't causing the issue. And it was just really helpful. And I also had an issue with the Engage for Success website where I needed to upgrade the PHP, which I did, and then that caused
the whole thing to stop me being able to log in, and then that turned out to be a problem with a plugin which was corrupted. I then had to re-upload that and sort that out, and then there was another issue, and so I was on the chat to them 3 times that day about that website as well, and they just helped me sort it out, and all was well. And I don't think anyone probably knew there was a problem with that website apart from me. So I'd say they're a definite recommend. I wouldn't say they're particularly cheap, but they're not really expensive either. And as I say, the level of uptime and the level of support when things do go wrong is just brilliant. So if you go to joedodds.com/recommends with an S, and then /liquid web, you should find out more about them there. Okay. The show notes for this week's show can be found at powertolivemore.com/98, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.